Before starting my presentation, I would like to thank all of you, especially organizers, to give me this opportunity to be here and present one of my recent research. Today, I'm talking about gene regularity network and its application in cancerous cells. Maybe you say that what is the meaning of gene regularity networks? Same as us, that we have some relationship with some the other people. For this reason, we have some organization, government, company, university, even religion, culture. If we live separately, maybe we do not have all of this that I said. This concept comes from our relationship. And also, there is some reports that said genes also have some relationship between them. For this reason, maybe there is some organization between them that without understanding this kind of organization, maybe we cannot say that we know everything. Let me say one example. Consider that you know all the verb of a book, but it doesn't mean that we know this book or this paper. Of course, we know all the element, all the verb in the book, but it doesn't mean that we know this book. Same as here, in our life, if we know everybody, it doesn't mean we know our society. We should change our paradigm to point of view to understand this kind of society. And also, even in genes, in neurons, in markets, they are connected to each other. For this reason, we see sometimes they have own society without understanding this kind of society. It doesn't mean that our knowledge about the genes is complete. Today, I want to bring some idea from social science and psychology science to study genes society. As maybe you know, cancer is a gene disease. It means some biologists try to find some genes that they are important role in the cancer. But unfortunately, we see in this figure, number of deaths because of disease decrease, while the number of deaths because of cancer increase. What is the problem? Why cancer it doesn't accept to be controlled easily? Because these genes, there is some interaction between them, and without understanding this kind of society, maybe it is not easy answered, for example, to the cancer or many of the other diseases that is come from genes. If you look at this map shows cancer is the second reason to die because of disease. After heart disease, that the pink color here, that Russia and some parts in the Europe, United States, and some parts in the Asia, Australia, the heart disease is the first reason to die because of disease, but the cancer is the second. But there is some countries also, but you can see China, Korea, west of Europe, and some parts in the Africa, cancer is the first. And even aging also come from this kind of society between genes. And I see one article that it was so interesting to me that he said aging is a communication breakdown. It means the problem comes of society of genes. It doesn't mean that we can find special genes that can help us to live more. As I said, that cancer is known as a gene disease, but as I said, for example, I bring here as a cancer gene that right now because of long time research and many grants in this area, we know all genes of human, and also we know which genes are important in the cancer. So our knowledge about these genes is enough, but as I said, without understanding that they are not independent from each other, maybe it is not answered to many questions in this area. For this reason, cancer is a wide disease that it doesn't accept to be controlled easily. Here I bring, for example, one genes here that have a positive relationship, friendly relationship between these genes and these cancer genes. It means by expressing these genes, the genes, cancer genes also will be expressed. But consider the other genes that if these genes express, the cancerous genes reduce its expression. But the problem comes here when there is some relationship between genes 2 and genes 1 that they have the positive relationship, the friendly relationship. By expressing these genes in the direct relationship with the genes, cancer genes, we see cancer genes should be increase its expression, but in the other side, genes number 1, if it expressed, we see that gene number 2 also increase its expression, but by expression gene number 2, the genes, cancer genes should be reduce its expression. This is a kind of conflict or frustration between some genes that there are many reports in this area that after, in this decay especially. But the situation a little bit more complicated because we are not only one genes and two genes, we have many genes. For example, here I bring schematically some genes here that there are some connection between some genes to cancer genes, some of them positive, some of them negative, and it is not easy to understand. By expressing these genes, we can control the genes, expression of genes, cancer genes. It seems that we have a same as chess, that we have only 32 members in the chess. If we know all the members in the chess, it doesn't mean we are chess player, because these chess men connected to each other and make our position and our strategy in the playing. And here also we have a genes, they are connected to each other, but pay attention, we have more than 20,000 genes that they are connected to each other. It seems we have a very big chess that we know. The chess only have 32 members, but in the chess of genes are more than 25,000 genes inside in our cells. Let's look at one of the simple cell that is a kind of mushroom cell with only 6,000 genes that in 2016, this guy, Costanzo, he published his reports in the Science in 2016. Based on a network, he tried to understand this community between genes, same as us, as I said. We try to understand some organization in our society, for example, government, as I said, university, and many organizations, many companies. We cannot reach them, only pay attention to a person. We should understand how they are connected to each other, who's the boss, who's the other person, and make this kind of organization. They reported that there is some community inside these interaction genes that I said that 6,000 genes exist in this simple cell, that there is some community and organization that based on this kind of organization they can answer some question. Maybe without understanding the government, we cannot understand the answer of some question. We should understand some of this organization to answer many questions that we have in the biology too. I want to bring an idea from social science and psychology science that it's come from 1945 from Heider, that he said our relationship is not independent from each other. It means the relationship between two persons is depend to the other person too. Because, for example, every of us, it is important to know who's friend of our friends. If I know my friends have a dangerous friend with a dangerous person, maybe I change my relationship with him. Why? See, this is the kind of interaction that not only the direct interaction are important, but also some indirect interaction also it is important. I want to say that my friends that have a dangerous friend, maybe I change my friendship with my friend. I want to bring it, this idea to study the organization of the genes. If I want to say better, maybe pay attention to, this is one of the castle, Persian castle, more than 2,000 years before. Right now is the Tagha Kasra. Right now it placed near to Baghdad, 30 kilometers from Baghdad. Unfortunately, it's going to destroy it. If you look at some person here, you can understand that this castle is very huge without any columns. What is the difference between this castle and some street that I bring here? Oh? In the elements, there is no difference between them. The hill of streaks and this castle. If I look at only the elements of this castle, I reach to the hill of these streaks. But there are many differences between hill of streaks and this castle. Why? Because there is some organization between the elements here and make this castle, but in the hill of streaks there is no organization. There is no relationship between these streaks here. But in the castle, one streak here and the other streak should be near to this one, and they are connected to each other and make this castle that we can see in this picture. I want to say there is some organization between genes that in this presentation I would like to attention to this kind of organization and how we can reach them and how they can help us to answer some question that without understanding them, it is not easy to understand the many questions that maybe we have. As I said, the idea comes from Haider. This is the Haider. He, psychology scientist, in 1945, he said and introduced one of the theorem in the psychology and social science as balance theory. What balance theory said? Balance theory said we adjust our relationship based on reducing the psychology stress. What is the meaning of psychology stress? These two guys in 1950 said, consider you are between your parents and your partner. You love both of them, but if they hate each other, you are in the bad situation. This is the kind of psychology stress in our relationship. How we can solve and reduce this psychology stress? It seems it is so easy. At the first, maybe it is better you try, they love each other. Otherwise, it is better you forgot one of them. This is the solution. But the solution is not very simple, because if we want to change any of our relationship, this relationship exists between these three persons, and also there exists between these three persons. For example, if you want to change your relationship with your parents, maybe your uncle said, what are you doing, man? Why you are forgetting your parents? It's not good for you. And also you are get trouble with your uncle or maybe the other relatives. I want to say that it is not easy to change our relationship very easy, because we are not mathematical parameters that we can change anything. And we see sometimes we are in the psychology stress and nobody can do anything sometimes. In the 2005, these three physicists try to model these theorems that come from psychology science and social science based on these triangles and as a spin-off electron. They said for every friendly relationship we get positive, and every enemy friendship they said is a negative. And based on concept of the spin in physics, they find in the Hamiltonian to measure psychology stress in the network. They find this Hamiltonian. Based on this Hamiltonian, we can measure the psychology stress, and also we can find how this system dynamic based on this equation that I do not want to explain more, because I want to share the idea, not only mathematics, but if you like it, you can reach their papers in the Physical Review E in 2005 that I can share my presentation, that if anybody wants to know more about this theory. They find in the dynamic there is some global minimum, there is no stress, and sometimes they find some local minimum. It means there is some stress or frustration in the situation, and nobody can do anything because you are in the minimum local and you need some things do to release yourself from this jam state. You should pay something to come up and going down. And also in 2017, we published one paper that we said that going to this minimum local, it means sometimes that I said we are going to we have some psychology stress and nobody can do as minimum local. We find some indicator in the systems that how we can, before reach to this situation, we can detect that we are going to the jam state minimum local or global minimum. Let's come back to the cancer, that I wanted to apply this theorem in the cancer to detect some organization in the cancer. We have used this kind of data from Nature Genetics that they published their article in 2013. And data bank is public for research purpose. For this reason, we access this kind of data set, that this data is for 114 normal person, healthy person, and 764 cancerous samples. Based on this data, at the first we try to find correlation between genes in the many person. For example, we consider two genes. If these two genes at the same time they are expressing in the cancerous person or in the normal person, we find there is some correlation between them. We find some correlation between them, the gene number 2 and number 1. If I see in the various samples they express at the same time, it means this correlation is high, and we can find this correlation matrix. But the problem is, this matrix is so huge because we have more than 25,000 genes, and this matrix is very high. And the other problem is if we know correlation between two genes, it doesn't mean that they are interaction. Because interaction have a causality. Correlation, it means they have the same behavior. How we can reach to the interaction matrix? here. Let's see what is the difference between correlation matrix and interaction matrix. For example, I have interaction with two persons at the same time with the positive. They and we try to get same behavior because of our interaction. But there is no interaction between these two persons. But since they want to do something that I like, sometimes they doing same because I want, I like this kind of behavior because we are friends. So the correlation exists between these two persons without any interaction. I want to say that how correlation and interaction are different. I have two friends, but they do not know each other. But if you look at their behavior, you find their behavior a little bit same because both of them are friends with myself. For this reason, sometimes we find some correlation without any interaction. How we can find interaction between genes if we know this kind of mean value, for example, correlation and mean value of gene expression in each person. There is a theorem in physics and of course in the computer science and many data science based on inverse problem and maximize entropy. If we know interaction between that I bring here as a Hamiltonian, if we know the Hamiltonian or interaction between elements, we can find any mean value in these interactions. For example, how many genes expressed and the correlation between gene expressions. But there is a method that the name is maximize entropy. We try to maximize entropy based on this knowledge. And if the correlation matrix elements is by Gaussian function, this paper in the PNAS, that is a famous journal in 2006, they show there is this kind of relationship between matrix interaction and matrix correlation. It means inverse of matrix correlation, we can reach to the matrix interaction. Based on this idea, that this is one of the example, classic example that many students can do it in the, for example, exercise in class, that if we consider some mass and a spring, that there are interaction between these, the first neighbors between this mass and this mass. For this reason, the matrix interaction, we have a same that I bring here, three diagonal. But based on the inverse of this, we can reach to the correlation, and also we can calculate the correlation between these mass here and find a matrix correlation that we can see that they are the same. This is one of the classic example to do inverse problem. Okay, we find the matrix correlation between genes expression, then we can reach to the matrix interaction, then we try to apply to find these kind of triangles, as I said, that Antal in 2005 they introduced. After that, we find the difference and similarity between genes interaction in the cancerous cells and in the normal cells. We see in these triangles there is no difference between cancerous cells and normal cells, but in these triangles they are different. For example, the three positive or triflenary relationship in the normal cell is higher than cancerous cells, but this one is different. And also, if you want to know where is the frustration in the map, we can see in the normal cells higher frustration, higher psychology stress. Of course, there exist, but they are not connected to each other based on the energy that interaction that I calculated. Maybe this figure is show better, that in the normal cells, you see that there are frustration that I show them here as a red circle. They are not connected to the main network of interaction between genes, but in the cancerous cells, we see how these psychology stress triangles that I said, or frustration, they are part of the interaction. For this reason, that maybe it is not easy to solve cancer as a disease. In the continue, based on the random matrix theory, if there is some organization, who's the boss? Because same as us, that we have one personality life, that maybe all of us same, but in the structure, when we have organization, there is some boss in the organization, and we should find them, because if we find them, maybe we can find some solution based on that we know them. Based on the random matrix theory that at the first time we introduced node participant ratio in one of the paper that in 2019 we introduced, we can find that if there is some organization, we have a united structure, same as a country that have a president and some the other person that in the organization that is important, or maybe we have federalism. For example, there some federal that they are independent a little bit from each other, but there are some connection between them. It means there is many boss here, same as some countries that they have some alliance between them. We can find that cancerous cells and normal cells, both of them have the same situation as a federalism. It means some parts it seems so important, and the other parts also there is some interaction between them. They are also important. It means there is some different organization inside the interaction of cells and genes. By understanding them, maybe we can find some answer for some question. Based on this analysis, we find some genes that they are important role in this organization. For example, I find these genes that I can name them in the normal cells, some in the tumor, and some in the metastasis. That metastasis is one of the cancer that it seems we cannot solve this kind of disease, this very dangerous cancer. And also we find some common genes that they are important in these three kind of normal and tumor and metastasis. We named here, before that we name here, we see that the highlighted genes, biologists find them that they are important in the cancer. Of course, the cancer that we have studied is the breast cancer. They find these genes that they are important in the cancer, but we find some of the other genes, it seems they are not enough important based on their personal tags, but they are important in the organization that, for example, which one is the boss in the organization. So these results maybe can help to biologists try to find some solution. For example, I know that I have a problem in the special company, a special organization, but and boss can help and can solve my problem. But I'm going to find a person, maybe it is not so important person in this company or organization, but sometimes he can help me to solve my problem without going to telling to the boss. I want to say that if there is some organization, of course, boss should do some things, but maybe it is not easy to reach them. And sometimes we can the other person that they are not so important in them and that company and that organization, maybe they can help us that these list of our results shows that there are the other genes that they are not maybe important role in the function of genes. They are important role in the organization that can help us to solve the cancer problem. The other point of view is a control ability. In the network science, one of the questions that it is so interesting is how many nodes I should be controlled that I can control this society. We applied this kind of methodology to the genes in the cancer and in the normal cells. We find, you see that here the red one is a driver node. It means you should be control these nodes that you can control the society. You see, in the normal cells and metastases, the number of driver nodes is very high. It means they are not controlled. We cannot control it easily. But here we see that the number of nodes that we can control them and we can control the situation in the tumor is low. It means we should be hope that we can find some solution for the cancer, but it seems metastases there is no solution because the number of genes we should be controlled is very high, and also normal. For this reason, we are not going to be cancer because normal also is so strong against some diseases. But tumor accept to be controlled, but it seems right now we have not exact solution to control this kind of disease, but of course there is some way in the medicine, but it seems we should find. Of course there is some technical result here that is better, I forgot it. And also we can apply this kind of a study to the different data set. For example, one of the research that we have applied in the brain networks about autism and hyperactive person. And also in the autism and hyperactive person is the kind of gene activity, neuron activity in our brain. And also our brain connected to each other, each neuron connected to each other. For this reason, they have their own networks, and based on these networks, we can reach the whole story. As I said, to understand all the verb of a book, it doesn't mean we know this book. We should read this book. Because how this verb come together and make this story is different, and based on this study, we can find which part of the brain network are important to excited to solve the autism. That we published this article in 2021, and also hyperactive data, and we find the solution is come from these kind of triangles in our study, that we bring it from social science to study the brain networks. And we see autism, these triangles is so low, but in the hyperactive, these triangles is higher than normal person. It seems we are hyperactive for autism person, and hyperactive person judge that we have autism, because hyperactive have the number of these triangles in the hyperactive person is so high, and in the autism we have a low density of these kind of triangles. Let's look at the brain network. This is the autism, this is a control, it is the healthy people, and we can find that, for example, here there is no these kind of triangles that I said, three negative angles, but here we can see there is some things here. I know by exciting, but based on electromagnetism to the brain, somebody tried to solve the autism problem in our brain networks. That here we say that which part of brain are important, because, for example, here we see that some things here, but there is no here. And we can find some plan how we can excite this brain to solve this kind of disease. Of course, we should study more, because it is not easy to apply this kind of methodology only with one work, and we should develop our methodology and some concept in the neuroscience. And also, it can be applied in the financial market. And in one research that we have submitted this article and said that it seems cancer in biology and financial crisis have the same features. Of course, they are completely different discipline, but in the physics we have some universality class. It means if we know this kind of universality is not depend to the phenomena that we are studying. For example, here, one in the crisis, financial crisis, one in the cancer cells between genes, and also in the financial crisis, there is some markets, there is some company that they are connected to each other, same as genes, same as us. For this reason, we have a financial crisis that we see how financial crisis and cancerous cells have the same feature based on this study. And we find, for example, here that when the red color is intense, it means we are in the financial crisis, that we introduce our methodology in one of the paper that we have submitted. This paper that you can find in the archive. If you like, I can share it with you. And the last page, I want to say some our new research in the cryptocurrency and forex data. I don't know that if you have some experience in the forex and cryptocurrency, there are some jumps in the price of cryptocurrency, for example, Bitcoin. Suddenly they jump. And in the literature, these jumps named as a whale. Based on this methodology, we find there is some organization between this whale that they are living together. Based on understanding this kind of behavior, you can reach to some question. For example, I'm working in your figure, that how your figure moving. If I only attention to your figure, maybe it is not easy to understand where your figure wants to move. But if I know this figure is part of you and you want to leave this salon, maybe I can predict that this figure wants to leave the salon. I want to say how we are thinking about this kind of behavior. By looking many of these whales, we try to understand how the other whales will come. Of course, this is a snapshot of my platform that I applying this methodology. Of course, this is a demo version. I applying this methodology in my predict and trade in the forex and cryptocurrency. This is a snapshot I bring here. That I make it in. There is some date here that I make a snapshot to here. Thank you so much for your attention. If there is any question, I'm here to answer.
У вас есть вопросы? Thank you. Код выведи. QR-код. Уважаемые участники, пожалуйста, сейчас опять появится QR-код, перейдите по нему, и мы собираем вашу обратную связь. Пожалуйста. Отправлю сейчас вам всем в чат общий.